Hello and welcome to this art video in which I discuss the tips and advice that I have for anyone beginning digital art. I was asked this question on my Instagram and I thought it'd be a really good idea to make a video for it. So here we go. First off, the device you use is really important because you want it to be appropriate for what you're creating. If you want to create larger scale paintings, then I would really advise you use a laptop or a desktop computer or a really high-end tablet if you have the funds for it. Otherwise, an ordinary tablet or your phone will do perfectly fine. So for laptops and desktop computers, I would really advise getting a graphics tablet with a stylus. This gives the act of painting a more natural feel because you're using a pen. For tablets, you might want to buy a stylus. If your tablet is compatible with pressure-sensitive pens, then that's great. But if it's not and you're not too bothered with pressure sensitivity, you can always just get a really cheap stylus for like $2.50 in a pound shop. It's perfectly fine. That's actually what I use when I'm doing tablet art myself, and I have no problems with it at all. So the next thing you want to consider is the software or the app that you will be using to create your art. If you have an iPad, obviously Procreate is the popular choice amongst iPad artists. Otherwise, you can use other apps that are available out there. The one that I use is Autodesk Sketchbook. I use a free version and I bought a brush pack and it really increased my functionality of the app. On the computer, there are just so many different softwares out there. There's obviously Photoshop, Krita, Paint Tool, Artweaver. You can get Autodesk Sketchbook for your computer as well. I can't think off the top of my head any other softwares, but there are so many, so look into them. In general, your setup, just make sure you're comfortable. If you're using a mobile device, obviously you can just hold it in your hand, but you do want to be comfy while you're using it. But for your desktop or your laptop, put it on a desk, put your graphics tablet in front of it, make sure your chair is comfortable and supportive to your back because you're going to be sitting for a while. And just in general, just make sure your workspace is comfortable. So on to the more general tips. My first tip is to doodle. Treat it like a sketchbook when you start first. You can get a real feel for your setup, the software that you're using, and the act of digital painting itself. Don't jump straight into doing some amazing piece because you don't have to create that all the time with digital art. You can just play around with it. Just get to know it, get a feel for it. Go crazy. So your brushes. Probably the most frequent question I've seen digital artists being asked is, what brushes do you use? Instead of asking that question, just go into the brush palettes in your software and try them all out. Explore all the different brushes, play with the settings, find what suits you. So a very general art tip is to prepare. With traditional art, it's best to have an idea before you start your painting. So plan your art before you start is pretty much my mantra. Do little thumbnails, work out a color palette, do an under sketch or an under painting, whichever you feel more comfortable with. Maybe if you feel comfortable with both. This can help you even further to get a feel for the software that you're using. It gets in a lot more practice as well with digital art. So win-win. Use your layers. Digital art kind of gets a bad rep for being easy, apparently, because people just think because you can delete and undo things that it's automatically easier than traditional art, and I'm going to disagree because digital art is a lot harder than it's given credit for. And the use of layers is one of the reasons why people think it's easy, but you can use your layers for other things than just dividing up the segments in your painting. You can use it for just experimenting with different elements and different effects and different blending modes, lighting modes, whatever. It also helps you learn more about the software. Experiment a lot. I've used the word a few times already in this video. Experimenting is key in both traditional and digital art. And with digital art, I think you really need to experiment just to find what suits you. Try out your different brushes, your layers, effects modes, everything. And soon you will develop a look that suits you. A really, really helpful tip that I learned was before you try color, try grayscale first. This helps you to get to know about tones and values before you dive into color. Color can be daunting. You'll get hung up on what colors you're using as opposed to the darks and the lights, your tones, your contrast. Use a mid-tone background. I find that white canvas that you get at the startup is very daunting. It's hard on the eyes and it takes away from your highlights. If you use a mid-toned background, then you will be able to see your highlights better, your darks better. If you use that white background, you might end up making things way too light. You know, your darkest color could be just in the mid-range, and you really want that contrast. It's nice to have a contrast. Don't overblend. I see so many artists going crazy with their blending and making everything look really soft and round and everything, and everything looks so rubbery. I started doing that myself when I started digital painting first. It's very tempting just to get an airbrush and do your shading or your lighting, but everything just ends up looking like rubber. So there are hard shadows and light shadows. I would advise you experiment with both. Mix them together, like do some areas soft, some areas with hard shadows, because that's kind of what happens in real life anyway. So don't overblend. Try sketch to digital. If you have a sketch in your sketchbook, then take a photo and bring it up on your software and color it digitally. And I think this is a really, really fun method because you're blending the traditional and the digital. There's a nice balance between the two of them. There are a lot of artists who do this, and I think the most popular one would probably be Cyrene, I think is how you say her name, or her username. She does it a lot. She takes a picture of her sketchbook page and she colors it digitally. And it always looks really nice to see just a little sketch colored in. Or maybe you have an ink drawing that you really like, but you don't want to put color on the actual thing, but you just kind of want to see what it looks like with color. It's always good to bring it in digitally and color it there. And my last tip is the cliche: practice all the time. Practice is so important because you're never going to get good if you don't get good. You're never going to improve if you don't practice. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Best of luck to all you guys who are starting digital art. I hope this video was helpful. If anybody else has any tips that they'd like to add, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye bye.